I love indie games. They keep the industry going around with so many new, creative, and unique ideas. And in this video, I've assembled a bunch of amazing creators to talk about their favorite indie JRPGs. So to kick things off, let me send it over to Alex from Backlog Battle.
What's up, everyone? Alex here. I just want to take the time to thank Taylor for inviting me to this collab, which has like one of my most favorite topics ever, because I believe that JRPGs can grow and evolve and innovate in a variety of surprising ways. And I think that there are so many different innovations that are coming out from indie JRPGs. So then it makes a lot of sense for me to pick Chained Echoes as my absolute favorite out of so many that have come out over the past several years, because of the passion of one Matthias Linda and the fantastic soundtrack that Eddie Marianocro has imbued and embedded in this incredible game. It manages to pave a brand new path to JRPGs that a lot of other developers are reluctant to take. One of my favorite things about Chained Echoes, in addition to the mech combat, is its ability to control the pacing of combat by way of this interesting temperature mechanic where you can't be too overly aggressive because your enemies can take advantage of that aggression. And this simple change manages to capture some of the real risks that happen during the middle of battle. What's also fantastic about Chained Echoes is that it does not have a traditional leveling system. Yes, you can still grind to get powerful gear and craft useful items for you to use, but Chained Echoes really focuses on the strategy and polishes it to a level that is comparable to the classics. Best of all, it is a love letter to JRPGs, with its inspirations stemming as far back as the 16-bit and 32-bit era of JRPGs. So if you haven't played Chained Echoes yet, I highly recommend checking it out. Thank you again to Taylor for inviting me to this collab, and I'll see you at my channel.
Hi there, everybody. This is David over at the channel DavidVinc, and thank you so much, Taylor, for having me on. So I just have to say, I know that Taylor does not like these games, but I do! They're like some of my favorite games out there. I love them ever since I was a kid, and I just love the Saga series in general. So whenever I saw an indie RPG that looks at those three games in particular in the Saga series and really just writes a love letter to them, I had to include it here because it is great. It is called The Secret of Varonis, and it is essentially the best of those three games all kind of rolled into one. Just like the first and second games, you can choose your party from humans, mutants, monsters, or robots, and each of them level up in their own separate ways. Humans will level up by buying them stat increase items, mutants will level up just by fighting, monsters will level up through meat, and robots will level up through the equipment that you have, just like in those older games. But things are different. There's quality of life improvements now. Now, whenever an Esper levels up, you can actually choose what stats you want them to gain or what spells you want them to learn. If you don't want to eat the meat for the monster, or you don't have a monster in your party, you can go ahead and sell that for cash. The world is open, just like the old Saga games. There are multiple worlds to explore, and they're all connected by a tower. Just like in Final Fantasy Legend 1, there are named guests that come and go and join your party, leave, and they come back. There's storylines attached to them. This isn't bare bones basic like it was in the 80s. This is modern quality of life improvements. Whenever a town changes or you go and you do something in the world, the NPC dialogue will change as well. You can choose, as far as the monster appearance is concerned, whether to have them be random encounters like in the old days or have them be on-screen encounters. You can speed up your walking. You can even choose whether you want your weapons to break in combat or not, whether they'll all be healed up at the end, even if they're not robots. Like, everything is modernized in these games. It is so fantastic, but it's just like you're back in the 1980s playing the Final Fantasy Legend games like I did when I was a kid. So I just adore them, even though somebody out there doesn't. Thank you so much, Taylor, for having me on your channel to discuss these great games. And I hope to see all of y'all over at my channel, DavidVinc. Have a good day.
What's up, y'all? Retro Brandon here, and my favorite indie game, or at least one of my favorites because there are so many amazing ones out there, is Undertale. Undertale is one of the weirdest, most hilarious, unique, and surprising indie games I've ever played. There are plenty of other games I can go on about, but Undertale is in its own category. It's probably one of the most influential games out there, spawning countless fan games, reviews, music covers, just YouTube videos in general. But I don't want to say too much about this game because it's definitely best played mostly blind. Despite how quirky the art style is, the level of understanding that Toby Fox, the developer of this game, showed for the RPG genre is pretty incredible. The game absolutely assumes you have some familiarity with the genre, and then it delights in messing with your perceptions and expectations. But it's so much more than that. So much meta. There are layers to this game that are so hard to describe without spoiling things. Don't do it, Brandon! Okay, so the basic premise of this game is that you're a kid in this underground with monsters trying to get back to the surface. The player has multiple choices when faced with monsters that attack, namely to fight or act. Fighting is pretty standard where you can win, gain experience, or EXP, and level up, though EXP and LV are maybe not what you would expect. Or you can use acting to spare them. But this game remembers every decision you've made. Your decisions, your morals, everything has very, very real consequences. And just when you think you've gone through a nice little story, made some good decisions, it turns out that there's so much more to unravel and discover. It just gets deeper, the plot thickens, the game starts to mess with you. You think you're playing Undertale, but you'll see. Anyway, I've already said too much, honestly, but this game is amazing. And if you decide to do it all, you'll be faced with one of the most meta, epic, musically awesome last boss fights in any game, let alone an indie game. So go check it out. And if you're a fan of retro games with a major dose of RPGs and nostalgia, check me out over at Retro Brandon. See you over there.
What's going on, guys? Up in Nimbus here. So when Taylor had asked me what's an independent JRPG that is an all-time favorite of mine, well, I had to go with Kriz Tales. Kriz Tales is an indie turn-based JRPG developed by Dreams Uncorporated and Sick and published by Modus Games. The game was released simultaneously worldwide on all modern platforms back in July of 2021, which is hard to believe that this JRPG is already 3 years old. Man, how time flies. And speaking of time, in this game, you'll actually be jumping through time itself. That's right, you can explore the past, present, and future through means of time manipulation. Both the gameplay of turn-based battles and map exploration include jumping through time and utilizing its capabilities in order to navigate the world and change the tide of battle to your advantage. The screen within Kriz Tales is split into 3 sections, showing the past, present, and future respectively from left to right. Throughout the game's story, our main protagonist Crisbel must accomplish a series of events with the aid of Matthias, where she must take the mantle as the new time mage to learn from the past, save the present, and change the future. With you as the player, your choices can affect the ending of the game and also the lives of NPCs, so there's potential for multiple playthroughs to see everything and aim for that 100% completion rate. When going up against enemies in battle, Crisbel has the ability to summon crystal powers, which can fling foes into either the past or the future. Timed commands also play a role in battle, where if timed correctly, you can land critical hits when attacking or reflect and minimize enemy attacks in return. It's all about the timing in this JRPG. Taylor from the Gaming Shelf, thank you so much for inviting me on this collaboration of yours. And as always on these collabs, I look forward to everybody else's choice within this video. So until the next time, everybody, Up in Nimbus is signing off.
Hey friends, it's Brandon from Just the Gems. Thanks so much, Taylor, for having me on to talk about an indie JRPG that really surprised me in recent years, and that's Arafel. This is the perfect example of how a great 2D pixel art game can make you feel like a kid again. The graphical presentation is actually significantly better than what our Super Nintendos could pull off, but the feelings it evokes puts me right back in the shoes of that 16-year-old kid who found so much joy in these games. RFL is the story of a floating continent and an ancient conflict between elves and vampires. The main character is Lita, an archer with a penchant for treasure hunting and a knack for getting into trouble. When her village is turned to stone by a curse from an ancient relic she unearthed, she has to find a way to set things right and maybe even bring an end to the war with the vampires for good measure. The combat system starts out relatively simple with your basic attacks and special moves, but it grows in complexity as you gain access to super moves that can be activated by using a power meter shared between all your party members. You'll upgrade your armor via a crafting system, and RFL wins the honor of being the first crafting system in a JRPG that I've actually liked. Crafting items are plentiful, and the game makes you feel like you can become as powerful as you want if you're just willing to put in a bit of effort. Also, for you story hounds, there's a story mode here which doesn't remove combat entirely, but allows you to end any battle, even bosses, with the push of a button, and gives you all the experience and money you would have received if you'd actually played the battle. If you want to breeze through the game and just enjoy the story, hey, that's an option. But the combat's fun enough that I imagine you'll want to participate in at least most of the battles. And speaking of story, the story is good. Not just the overall plot, but the dialogue writing is top-notch. RFL feels like a game that could have come out in the 90s, but it definitely doesn't read like a game that came out in the 90s. If you're up for a beautiful JRPG experience and you don't mind a game clocking in at under 20 hours, then you absolutely should give RFL a try.
Hey everybody, Erek here. Thanks so much, Taylor, for having me on today to chat about one of my favorite indie JRPGs. And of course, I'm going to pick no other than 8-Bit Adventures 2. Fantastic game by a really talented Australian developer. 8-Bit Adventures 2 is a delightful retro-inspired JRPG that excels in storytelling and character development. And it's also set in a beautifully crafted 8-bit world that is going to appeal to JRPG veterans and newcomers alike. 8-Bit Adventures 2 follows the main character and his friends as they uncover a world-threatening anomaly. There's a blend of your typical RPG tropes, serious themes, and clever meta jokes. Gameplay-wise, 8-Bit Adventures 2 removes a lot of the fluff, making grinding unnecessary and keeping the focus on progression and exploration. And visually, to me, it is pixel perfect, obviously reminiscent of the NES and Super Nintendo era, but it has that Shovel Knight charm. It's like the best Game Boy Color game you've never played. So that's 8-Bit Adventures 2 in a nutshell. I hope you guys check that out. It's only available on Steam right now, but it is coming to consoles really soon. So please keep your eyes peeled. Anyway, thanks Taylor for having me on. On to the next one.
Hello, John aka Chicken Fillets here, and thank you to the one and only Taylor from the Gaming Shelf for having me on to discuss, well, a indie JRPG that you should play. Now, this was an easy choice for me straight out the bat, and I have gone with Sea of Stars, the indie JRPG from Sabotage Studios. Now, this kick-started JRPG was released back in 2023, and we follow the story of two Solstice warriors in their quest to destroy the Dwellers. Now, in classic JRPG fashion, there is twists and turns, and to be honest with you, I completed this game this year, and I tell you what, the twists and turns really got me. The game has turn-based combat, and you'll be able to switch your characters within battle. Honestly, this battle system is so much fun. Now, I mentioned earlier, it is a pixel art JRPG, and man, chef's kiss, it's utterly gorgeous. Those sprite works is amazing. Now, if I've not sold you on the game thus far, well, you need to listen to the soundtrack as well. There is guest appearance from Yoshinari Mitsuda. However, the standout here is Eric W. Brown bringing in metal mixed with, well, chiptune. It's amazing. And if you have completed Sea of Stars, that boss battle music with the double bass kick drum, oh, so good. And on a personal note as well, I completed this game this year, and it is in contender for my game of the year. Anyway, thank you to Taylor for having me on. I've been John, aka Chicken Fillets. Please make sure to pop on over and say hello. Anyway, until next time, tatty bye.
Yo, YouTube, what is good, Bruv Gang, what is good, and we are back with another collaboration video. A massive thank you to Taylor for reaching out to have me take part in this awesome idea for a video. So without further ado, let's get straight into my favourite indie JRPG. Now, where there were other indie JRPGs that I wanted to pick but were chosen, I always had a game in the back of my mind that really piqued my interest when I first discovered it, with that game being Astria Ascending. So for those who may not be familiar with it, Astria Ascending is a turn-based RPG with platforming elements developed by Artisan Studios and published by Dear Villagers, releasing back in 2021 on all modern platforms. So Astria Ascending is set in the fantasy world of Orcanon and sees you follow a group of demigods named the Fated Eight. They act as the agents of the goddess Juno, who presides over the integrity of a multicultural society governed by a doctrine known as the Harmony, which is populated by sentient beings of various species. Now, where the story may not be much to write home about, I really love the turn-based gameplay, which gives you the player control of 4 party members which can be swapped out for any of the 8 characters you have available at your disposal. Attacks are all tied to different elemental attributes, with each character having their own element-specific strengths and weaknesses which can be used to get the upper hand in battle. Now, the platforming elements within Astria Ascending are very much similar to a game like Valkyrie Profile, and it's something I absolutely love throughout my time with the game. The environments and character designs were all beautifully portrayed with a unique 2D hand-drawn art style which gave the game its personal touch, and is one of the main reasons I was very much drawn to this game in the first place. So if you're someone like me who really enjoy Valkyrie Profile's platforming elements and a solid turn-based combat system with a beautiful art style, then Astria Ascending is 100% an indie JRPG I recommend you play. Massive thank you once again to Taylor for having me take part in this awesome idea for a collaboration video. I really can't wait to see everyone else's choices. So until next time, this has been your bruv, the Big Bruv, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace!
Howdy my totally tubular gamers, it's your boy Jonathan. Now when it comes to indie RPGs, for me there really was only one choice at the end of the day, and that's Fillets 2. Fillets 2 is like the weirdest RPG I've ever played. I mean, the first thing you notice about it is the art style. It is just all over the place. The game mixes claymation with stop motion video, and we could be here all day just discussing how this game looks because there really is nothing else that looks like it. Not even the first game, and while this game might have a 2 in the title, you don't need to have played the first game. The story is as nonsensical as the graphics. Basically, it sees you, the yellow guy, Wayne, trying to stop the resurrection of this evil tyrant king, and that's all you really need to know about the story. While the game might look very unconventional, when it comes to the gameplay, it is actually quite traditional. At least on the surface, it's a somewhat traditional RPG where you explore around in some areas and get into turn-based battles. And along the way, you'll even get to solve some puzzles and play some other mini games. There's even platforming here. All this while you jam out to one of the greatest video game soundtracks ever. It uses psychedelic funk. I don't know how many other RPGs can say that, but the soundtrack is actually kind of goated. Something else that I really love about Fillets 2 is that no 2 battles really are the same. You cannot encounter every single enemy with the same strategy. In most RPGs, you can use a basic attack or a few spells that'll pretty much wipe out everything. Not the case with Fillets 2. Each one of them has a unique weakness. And really figuring out your team and the enemy's weaknesses and strengths is a huge part of the game. It actually makes the battles incredibly dynamic. No 2 battles are going to play out the exact same way, and there's a good amount of depth here. There's also some fun dungeon crawling, a decent amount of platforming, a good sense of exploration, and you're really just going to want to see what happens next. I mean, the game is so wild and visually so interesting that I couldn't put the game down from the moment I started. It's one of the most memorable video games I've ever played. And I think if you're looking for a very different type of RPG, this very much is one to check out. Shout out to Taylor for inviting me. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, it's Emily from Orbalology, and the game I wanted to share today is not a traditional JRPG, but it's one that I think a lot of JRPG fans would enjoy, and that is Transistor. This is a sci-fi indie RPG developed by Supergiant Games, and it's one that has a really unique sense of atmosphere. The storytelling is rather unique in that everything is being narrated by your sword, and you have to kind of navigate throughout the landscape and world and read various lore things to kind of understand and piece together what's going on in this kind of dystopian situation. One of the elements that I think a lot of JRPG fans will resonate with is the combat system. It kind of has this hybrid combat system that incorporates both your traditional action combat style along with the real-time strategy RPG elements where you could freeze time and kind of map out how the character will fight off various enemies. It also incorporates some other strategy elements with what are called functions, which are basically these skill sets that you can equip to battle with. And you also have to be very careful with how much energy you expend, because some of those battles can get rather tricky if you are using your skills a little bit too heavily. But Transistor is such a gem that I don't think it's talked about enough in the JRPG community, even though it has, I think, so many elements that a lot of fans would enjoy. So definitely give Transistor a look if you haven't tried it yet.
Hello, it's Miss Bubbles, and I'm choosing Anno Mutationum. Not only is this a JRPG that's completely slept on, but it's also 100% worth your time, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why. This is a side-scrolling action RPG set in a cyberpunk world that is absolutely stunning. It's developed by Thinking Stars, and I believe this was their first game. The game's beautiful, and the mix of pixelated 2D and 3D graphic style is gonna immerse you into its world. Not only that, but you also have a dark plot that's gonna keep you on your toes, and while it can't feel at times that the game is throwing so many characters at you non-stop, I still felt very attached to Anne. I was intrigued by her, and I wanted to learn more about her story. The combat is more of a beat-em-up style with dungeon crawling themes attached to it. You can unlock new abilities, which is very fun to do. You can also craft new and better weapons after different runs. You can dodge out of enemy attacks, you can parry or air dash while preparing yourself to counter attack. You also have the skill tree to progress whatever skills you want to get better in, so you can shape up your character and make her the way you want her to be. Apart from combat, the story itself and the missions are very fun to do. And I feel like they were pretty diverse. Like one moment you're gonna be bartending, the next you're gonna be on the streets exploring different cities, then here you are dismantling items to gather materials. After that, you're engaging in mini games and side quests. I feel like the side scrolling was a bit unsmooth at times, and the dungeons are a bit complicated. Like I can feel myself getting lost a lot in them at times, but I feel like these little flaws should not deter you from actually trying this game. And I believe for $25, even cheaper during sales, Anno Mutationum has a lot on offer. I remember streaming it for the first time, and my community and I were absolutely stunned by how amazing this game is. If you love everything RPGs and cozy content, definitely stop by my channel. Thank you so much to Taylor for having me over.
Hey everyone, I'm Super Derek, and thanks for having me on, Taylor. Shadows of Adam is an indie RPG that I don't think gets nearly enough love, and I'm here to fix that. It's a Super Nintendo throwback style RPG that came out on the Switch and PC a few years ago now, but it's so much more than that. It tells a fun story of discovery about the origins of magic and artifacts, being chased around the world by an eccentric prince obsessed with sparkling magical girls, and if you're looking for a game that takes itself super seriously, this isn't it. Shadows of Adam is a self-aware RPG with plenty of fourth wall breaking humor and references to the classics that inspire it. Let's just say that Final Fantasy IV isn't the only game that allows you to suplex a train. The dialogue of the game flirts with the line of parody without quite stepping over it. Shadows of Adam is a turn-based RPG without random encounters, which is especially nice when it comes to solving puzzles in dungeons uninterrupted. The combat itself is a unique take on the MP system as well, where spells, costs, and damage output scale along with the player because they're percentage-based. The character customization via equipping of various artifacts also allows you to come up with some very clever loadouts, which was extremely satisfying as well. That's Shadows of Adam by Something Classic. I think you're really gonna like it, so go check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tark here, and one indie JRPG you don't want to leave on the gaming shelf is Omocat's 2020 turn-based, Earthbound-inspired JRPG, Omori. Omori tells the story of a socially reclusive boy at two different distinct points in his life, slowly peeling back the layers of depression, guilt, coping, and inferiority that led this once happy kid to become so insular and insecure. The different time periods present in radically different ways, with real and imagined portrayals of the world and the events of his past, taking form to help him navigate and overcome the mysterious, tragic incident that made him who he is in the present day. Combat is done in first person, similar to old Dragon Quest games, but uses a variation of Fire Emblem's weapon triangle system, only switching out the weapons for emotional states. Happy, sad, angry, and neutral. The emotional states of the enemies and your player characters must be controlled and manipulated during combat to stand any chance of survival. The art in the game is fantastic, and the music is characteristic enough that simply hearing it all this time after playing the game brings the sorrow and heartache I felt for the characters at the time right back to the surface again. Honestly, in weird ways, I'd say it hurts even more to hear now than it did when I first played the game. In many ways, you could probably say that Omori is pastiche, or even remark that an indie RPG inspired by Earthbound that looks charming but actually contains dark subject matter isn't exactly original these days. or is possibly even overdone. But I would struggle to find a way to say that any of these things make Omori less than what it is. And what it is honestly fantastic. I can't recommend it enough, guys. Check out Omori.
What's up everyone, I'm Luca from Feiito Gaming, and when Taylor asked me to join this collaboration, I had a lot of great indie JRPGs in mind. But there could only be one indie JRPG that is my absolute favorite, and that is Crosscode. Crosscode is one of my favorite games of all time. Despite a passionate fan base, it never really got much attention outside of the indie scene though, or at least not as much as it should have. Crosscode is a retro-inspired action RPG that perfectly combines established JRPG tropes with a satirical undertone and fresh gameplay ideas. Gameplay-wise, this is basically separated between action combat with awesome elemental powers, a very emotional story full of twists, and a lot of mind-bending and challenging puzzles. The best thing though is that combat and solving puzzles is intertwined, because for both you need to throw these projectiles. They can be thrown at objects to push or pull them, and swapping element changes the projectile's characteristics, which completely opens up so many possibilities for puzzles and combat as well. The balance between these core elements is spot on and creates such an engaging and addictive gameplay loop that it's hard to put down the controller. Oh, and the soundtrack not only is packed with influences from JRPGs from the 90s, but is simply one of the best OSTs ever. I'd say if you're a fan of action RPGs with beautiful pixel graphics and puzzle-heavy dungeons as in Zelda games, you definitely need to check out Crosscode. Thanks so much for having me, Taylor. I absolutely love to talk about Crosscode, and I will continue to do that at every opportunity. Guys, pay me a visit on my channel if you like indie games, JRPGs and more. I'd love to see you there. Alright, see you guys next time.
When it comes to JRPGs, I feel like pure sci-fi is a fairly untapped area for the genre. Sure, there are a few standout series that do use the setting, but they're mostly few and far between. Enter Cosmic Star Heroine, a game that very clearly wears its influences on its sleeve, but also brings a lot of its own sauce to the table as well. The game has some really nice sprite work akin to Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, but what I really liked were the Phantasy Star 4-like cutscenes that played throughout the game. Its grungy, almost Blade Runner-esque setting about a group of agents realizing the organization they work for is corrupt is a fairly unique one for the genre. And it has a very likable cast with fun designs, even if their snarky attitudes to each other can get a little bit much by the end. What really sets it apart though is how incredibly well-tuned the gameplay is. It is a more linear, curated experience, but thanks to that and things like a limited number of random battles, it helps keep the game very well balanced. All of your actions come from a limited number of skills and items that you can set to your characters, and can only be used once until you spend a turn resting to recharge them. This gets interesting thanks to enemy encounters asking you to use these skills in various different ways to play optimally, and thanks to stuff like the hyper mode and style systems which give you huge damage boosts as you go through fights, you're really encouraged to not just cash out your strongest skills turn one and actually plan out how you're going to approach them. And this means that your big fancy special attacks actually feel like finishing moves. This results in a battle system that never ever grinds down to just mashing the basic attack button to get through random fights, meaning you actually get to engage with the systems quite a bit and also never really have to grind ever.
Hey everyone, James here from Ting, and when Taylor asked what sort of JRPG indie I would pick, I had to go for something that I really loved. Over the past couple of years, there's been some fantastic games sort of bringing back that golden era of gaming. Old school 8-bit and 16-bit JRPGs. Well, today I'm picking Dragonborn for the Game Boy. Dragonborn is a fantastic and charming retro JRPG developed by Spacebot Interactive, the original Game Boy. Released in 2021, it offers a nostalgic experience with turn-based combat and pixel art graphics. You take on the role as Chris, who embarks on a quest to find his missing father, Curtis, the region's greatest dragon slayer. Throughout the journey, you'll actually find yourself in some really tricky situations. There's an absolute ton to love about this game. The music is absolutely incredible. The turn-based battles just take you straight back to nostalgia, back in the days of the likes of Pokemon. It is a turn-based battle system and it is absolutely incredible. The fact this thing is on a Game Boy actually didn't hold back at all. It actually is a really nice, neat little package and everyone should definitely go out and check it out. There were parts of this game that really reminded me of Zelda, and you have to solve puzzles to unlock new paths and get through to other parts of the game. The story building in this game was also fantastic. The NPCs really included a lot into this factor. They often had quirky and humorous lines that made the world feel way more alive, which really made that experience a whole lot better. And what I will say is, if you want to give this game a go, it is actually available on Steam right now, so you can go over there and play it there. And that is why I have picked Dragonborn for the Game Boy. So thank you very much again, Taylor, for having me on, and I look forward to seeing everyone else's choices.
What's going on, everyone? Slam Zany here. I just want to say thanks to Taylor for having me on to talk about indie JRPGs. Some of my most memorable experiences come from indie games, and today I'm so excited to talk about Eternights. This game was shown off at a State of Play, and I remember being so incredibly excited about it because as a huge Persona fan, I recognized that the game was taking heavy inspiration from what is likely my favorite JRPG series of all time. But Eternights was doing something quite unique and leaning more into the social aspect of the game. The story is set in a post-apocalyptic world, adding a bit of urgency and drama to everything you do. You're not just out here fighting baddies, trying to survive this impending doom, but you're also trying to navigate complex personal relationships in a world that's falling apart, and how Eternights handles each character's different perspectives on what's actually happening is truly incredible. This adds real emotional depth to the game, as you must constantly balance the need to progress the main story with your desire to form meaningful connections with each of the characters you meet. The way that Eternights mixes these action RPG mechanics with the social or dating sim mechanics is pretty interesting in that you establish your connections with the other characters, and it opens up the way the actual moment-to-moment gameplay evolves. I feel like each character is well developed with their own interesting backstories and personalities. The interactions you have with them aren't just filler, they influence the storyline and can change the course of the game. This makes every choice you make feel important and impactful, giving a nice immersive quality that I personally really connected with. With all that said, Eternights offers multiple romance options and branching storylines, which means you can play through it multiple times and have a different experience every time. This encourages you to come back and explore new paths, making the game feel fresh even after multiple playthroughs. All of these elements come together to make Eternights a truly special indie game. It's not just about the action or the romance, it's about how these elements are seamlessly integrated to create a unique experience that I really enjoyed. Whether you're in it for the story or in it for the characters or the visuals or the combat, Eternights offers something for everyone. Be sure to give this one a try if you haven't yet. Thanks again to Taylor for having me on, and I hope to see you all at my channel.
And for my entry, I want to talk about an indie JRPG that I beat pretty recently, and that is Echo Generation Midnight Edition. Now, I know this came out on Xbox, but it recently came out across all other platforms, and man, is this game good. Basically, it's if you took Stranger Things and made it a turn-based RPG. You're just a kid in the 90s trying to have some fun, you're bored, and then your mom wants you to take your sister with you, and then eventually you get caught up in this crazy adventure. You hear rumors about monsters and aliens and all these other weird little things, but then as the game slowly unveils what's going on, it gets super intriguing. And to me, this game is all about the vibes. I just loved walking around its environments, like your school, which is totally empty during the summer, or these big cornfields, or these other little places. It was just so much fun to explore this town, collect all the different items, do tasks for everybody, and kind of just bathe in the nostalgia. Now, the combat itself is very similar to something like you might find in Paper Mario, where it's very timing based, and as you get new items and new abilities, they will change and they'll be kind of unique. I also love its voxel look. I know a lot of people go for either pixel art or something more 3D, but this kind of blends the two with the voxel art, and I don't know, I just have an affinity for it. I think it looks really cool. And also that music, man, it just hits the vibes just perfectly. And I know I'm saying that a lot, but that's kind of what I love about certain games, is the vibes. How does it make you feel when you play it? And when I rolled credits on Echo Generation, I just felt amazing. That was such a fun adventure, and it's only about 6 to 8 hours long, depending on how many of the side quests you want to do. Now, these are some of the best indie JRPGs the industry has to offer, but if you want to see what's coming up next, what indie JRPGs could even surpass them, make sure you check out this list of 25 upcoming indie JRPGs. They all look amazing, and I promise they won't disappoint you.